Welcome. It is Monday, July 9th, and this is the Wilmette Park District Regular Meeting Board of Park Commissioners. May I have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Here.
Commissioner Anderson?
Here.
Commissioner Ovani?
Here.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Here.
Commissioner Foster?
Here.
Commissioner Shelley is absent. Commissioner Wolf?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. First on our agenda is the approval of minutes from July 11th, 2018. So that's me.
I move to approve the minutes for the June 11, 2018 regular board meeting.
I'll second that.
Are there any comments or corrections to the minutes?
I had none.
Hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ovani?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Minutes are approved.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is communications and correspondence. I don't believe there were any in the packet, but do any commissioners have any communications or correspondence they would like to share? All right, hearing none, we will move along to recognition of visitors. I believe there is a Brownie or Girl Scout troop here that would like to address us this evening first.
Should we speak with the microphone?
Yes, please. Please come up to the microphone and you all can talk to us.
Pull them down a little bit.
Yeah, if you need to adjust them.
They're fine.
You're good.
Hi, my name is Lillian. We're a Avoca West Elementary School fifth grade Girl Scouts from Troop 41586. We did our journey project on natural play spaces.
My name is Ruth. First, we did research on natural play spaces online. The National Wildlife Foundation says, when children play and learn in nature, they use their imagination more. Children also spend more time indoors now than in the past.
My name is Nyana. Examples of nature play spaces equipment are boulders to climb, streams to dam, ponds to catch critters in, logs to practice a balancing act, and a multi-sensory garden to explore, versus swing sets and slides, parts of regular playground equipment.
Hi, I'm Katie. We visited Bison's Bluff Nature Playground in Schaumburg, Illinois. It was pretty rainy, but we got to play with a real stream, musical instruments, a woven hut for kids, and it was very, very enjoyable.
Hi, my name is Charlotte. At Bison's Bluff, we met with Mr. Dave Brooks, the manager there. He taught us a lot about that park. He said that he is constantly surprised at the different ways that the kids play with all the materials. We also learned that you can create a small play lot to demonstrate a natural play space. It doesn't have to be big and fancy. I was able to visit a play space in Philadelphia. They had a canoe to play in, shovels to dig with, and a frog in a sand area. We want to thank you for letting us speak to you about our project. And this is our scrapbook.
Oh, very cool.
That's beautiful.
I
Any
love the
questions?
pictures.
So, wow.
The girls could leave it here if you want, and I can come get it later.
It's beautiful. I have a question. What was your favorite thing in the play space? Was it the stream? Was it a rock? What do you think your favorite thing was?
Mine personally was the stream because you could put objects in it and use it as a structure in whatever activity you're doing, or you could just sit in it.
Cool.
My favorite was the building part of the play space.
My favorite was probably the stream, too. We could explore there. There was also slides, rope, ladders.
Cool.
My favorite part was the rocks to climb on because it was just fun.
Awesome. Well, thank you, girls. Are there any other questions from commissioners?
No.
We will definitely take your presentation into account next time we are designing a playground. And maybe you guys could come give input if we are considering doing a natural play space. Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. I would just add it. K Nature Center seems like a likely At some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, as we're changing that up.
Do you guys know where?
Yeah,
you know
have you
where
guys
that
been to
is?
K Nature Center? Yeah.
Love that place.
Yeah.
Have they been in it yet, the girls?
Have you guys been to K? Charlotte has. We had lots of photos taken.
It's hidden. Nobody knows it's there.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, and the day that we went to Shamrock it was the second time we were trying to go. The first time we were rained out. The second time we almost got rained out.
Aw.
But it was a very wet day.
Excellent.
Yeah, we kind of went back to our cars for about 2 inches of water.
Oh, no. Well, thank you for coming. If you have any other ideas, you're always welcome here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else that would like to address the board this evening?
I sent an email. Hi there, my name is Jeff Pazin, and I sent an email earlier today about Wilmette pools, especially Centennial Aquatic Center, and early closings. I'm here basically to elaborate that I'm not necessarily complaining. I'm just looking for a solution to find ways to alert the public when you guys are actually going to close. I know that there's a Wilmette Pools Twitter handle that gets relatively light usage. If that were a bit more used by the actual facility, it'd be very helpful for a lot of the patrons. My main concern is that a lot of people are actually starting to wean themselves from going to the pool because there are intermittent closings when weather, if it's even cloudy, they just decide not to go. And I think it's a great facility that really should be used, and that's it. So hopefully you guys will keep up the good work, and we'll be able to make use of such a great facility moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Actually, we did address this. So Stephanie, do you want to explain what happened? What we thought about that?
Do you, Steve?
If you would like me to.
Those details, I'm not sure I remember.
That's fine, if you would like me to
Please
elaborate.
do.
Sure. In Mr. Pazin's email, he specifically cited July 4th and July 5th. On July 4th, storms came through 4:30, 4:40 in that approximate time. When we get a thunder or lightning, we have to wait 30 minutes after that and make sure there's no further thunder or lightning before we reopen. We tracked hearing thunder up until 5:15. The facility was closed to schedule at 6 that evening. So at that point, at a minimum, we were going to reopen to 15 minutes before the closure. So the decision was made at that point to just shut down for the night. Then if you flash forward to the next day, the 5th, we had a combination of different factors at play. We had some intermittent weather that was passing through the area, combined with extremely low usage of the facility at about 5:30 in the evening. We had about 60 people in the pool when we did have weather. We chose to shut down completely at that point due to the low attendance, with hopes that the weather would clear out in time for our rental at 8 o'clock in the main lap pool for the New Cheer Swim Club. The weather cooperated, and we were able to facilitate the swim club as well as the master swimming program.
And the main focus I wanted you to relay is that there was a pretty healthy discussion about notification, about what's our procedures regarding whether we have a lightning detector, whether it's just a site program, whether we use apps, like what exactly we do and how we do it. And I think the conclusions that I came away from were it's a combination of technology for danger, right? Understanding where danger is. It's a combination of usage that definitely, if there's 300 people at the pool, right, and there's a lightning strike, then they're getting, they're not closing immediately, they're going to reopen. But so but it's the managers that are responsible for making the calls. It's not just a lifeguard. We did talk a little bit about Twitter and whether or not that's the most effective way to do it or not, because we use Twitter for if we're canceling soccer games, as an example, or the golf course is closing. We use Twitter for that, and we discussed this previously. So although we said that we didn't have any communications and correspondence we did discuss that, and I think that we're basically trying to come up with we're trying to take a lot of your comments that you just made and make the communication system better.
The other thing is that they pointed out there's the rainout line,
Right.
which you have to opt into, and for each activity that you're interested in receiving notices about. But if you opt into the pool, then you should receive notices every time the pool is
Opened and closed.
Right.
So
That may be something that needs to be communicated because, again, my issue is dealing with other patrons who basically grumble and groan
Right.
as we go. And I honestly didn't come here to complain to you guys because I'm hightailing it over there as soon as I'm done. But having some sort of notification system, I think, would be useful for the community.
And I didn't take it as complaining. I took it as like looking for a better way to create a better environment.
I thought it was complaining.
Thank you for your comments. We will look into some solutions. Thank you. Anybody else? Mr. Crystal?
I should add, I know Jeff. That's
Okay.
not.
Gonna say.
Good evening, Board.
Good evening.
Tonight, I'm only going to address some issues at the sailing beach, some of which we've talked about before. Basically, I just want you to know how I operate, and the porta potties, which are no longer an issue, are an example of that. I first, throughout the years, approached the lakefront manager, Ms. Peck, and Superintendent Bingham, and expressed all of these issues before. When nothing is being done, I brought it to the committee. If nothing is being done at the committee, then I bring it here, and if nothing is being done after it's here, I come back here and take it on the internet and continue moving forward until something is being done. And for example, the porta potties, all that needed to be said was, we're going to handle it, and that should be the end of it. So here we are again. First, let's start with the canopies. We talked last week about a shade, a little canopy that my buddy Ed put up on the in a private slip, and Ms. Peck came and asked us to remove it. I just want you to know that and I personally have no problem with that, as long as it's the same across the board with all the residents and all the members. There was a large canopy, and I have pictures of everything. I just didn't have time to send it to you. But on the 3rd of July, there was a large canopy, the one that people use in all the street fairs, right smack in the middle of the sailing beach on the north side, with a blue top. And Ms. Peck was there, and she said nothing, and it was there the entire day. So I just wanted to bring it to your attention. The other issue that I wanted to address is the visitors' entrance passes to the beach. It's still not really being enforced. These are the ones I bought. I paid $30 for them. And since you guys are not collecting, I will hand it back to you, and I'm asking for a refund. I just want you to see. These are $30, and by the end of the season, I would have paid more if you were just collected. This is $3,000, and this is what you can collect easily by these visitor passes. And this money, if you collect it, it belongs to the entire residence. And I just don't understand why you don't collect the money. We have expenses. We have services. We pay for a lot of things. This is a sort of a nonprofit business that you are entrusted to take care of, and I think you should collect it. There are a whole bunch of other reasons why you should collect it. Just think of it. If it was your business, personal business, would you just give this $3,000 away? That you don't have to spend a dime on collecting? You have the person sitting there. You have the passes. Would you just give it away? This is money that belongs to the entire community, and then we all know we have plenty of stuff to spend it on. So, and you can ask other people; they'll give you other opinions why it makes sense to. You'll be able to know how many people actually go in and out, and so the population. And Commissioner Abbott, you raised the issue of fairness when we were talking on parking fees between resident and non-residents. And is it fair that some people are paying and some people are not? I don't think so. Obviously, it creates overcrowding, especially on the north side, where the concentration of people and boats per beachfront is larger. And there are a whole slew of other things that you can ask other people. I just don't think that I need to elaborate, but if it will keep going, I will. So that's that. And yeah, by the way, on the 3rd of July, as always, I came to the beach in the morning, and I found 2 porta potties right in front of my sleep, and it's right in the turnabout, which is the emergency turnabout for emergency vehicles. So, and anybody that would use those porta potties would have to cross that circle where you have traffic. They've never been there for the 3rd of July. I apologize if I didn't have time to create. It's basically on the west side of the circle. The beach is on one side, and it's on the other side of the circle. So they were always by the water, closer to the water. They were to the right. So anyway, I pushed them to the other side, and Ms. Peck came and asked who moved them. And of course, I said I did. And I told her that this is harassment, and if they're going to be moved back, I would sue. And I mean what I said. It's dangerous for the public, and there's no reason to put it right next to a patron when it's not needed. I personally like them over there because it's on the other side. Besides the safety concern, it's right on the way to the water for me, you know, so I still use it. The porta potties are still there, and I know other people complain to Ms. Peck about it because we're still paying for them, and we don't really need them. We have 4 in the back. So they used to be removed on the 5th, but they're still there. You can go right now. That's all I got to say for tonight.
Thank you for your comments.
Can I just address the passes or not?
Yeah.
Because I'm not clear, because I am not a member of the Sailing Beach, so I don't go to the Sailing Beach. I go to Gilson and I go to the pool. Mm-hmm. And there are times where I don't have a pass for my entire family, mm-hmm. but they look us up in the system and they know we have paid. Mm-hmm. And I actually appreciate that they do that if I forgot a pass.
Right.
So is it possible that that is what's happening when they look in a car, they look up one person, they say, who's with you today?
They don't.
Because that's what they do at the pool.
My point is that they don't. They scan one
But
pass.
you're sure that they don't when you're not in other cars?
I can address, because Mr. Crystal brought this to our meeting and brought up a specific instance when he went to the Sailing Beach, as he does very frequently, and he had his daughter and her daughter's friend in the car, and whoever was checking the passes saw him and did not check for guests' passes for the daughter and her friend, or just the friend?
No, nothing, just me. Scanned one.
And so he was using that as an example of the fact that it doesn't get done. And I don't doubt that that was the case. I don't doubt that that happens on other occasions as well. However, as I said to him in that meeting, balancing that out was an email, and I was going to cover this in my notes, from his friend that he mentioned, Ed Petrosius, who his last sentence of his email about an unrelated topic was that the staff is doing a very good job of checking passes. So We have addressed it with staff. They're very much aware of it, and they have said that it's a work in progress. And I have told Mr. Crystal that there is no way that we're ever going to get to 100%. That's an excessive goal, but that we're working to get it to be much improved. And from what I've heard from other sailors, it has been improved so far this year, and we will continue to work on that. But it's a little bit difficult, I think, sometimes to change the culture and change the mode of operation from one season to the next. And we're still fairly early in the season.
I went down the lakefront on the 3rd in the afternoon and just tried to enter the sailing beach, and there was a young woman who was stationed under an umbrella in a chair who was definitely checking and made sure that asked me if I had a pass, and she did her job very well, and I turned around and left. I can't obviously be there all the time, but I will try to check from time to time as well.
I think it's a case of more than one person in a car only asking for one pass. And I've heard it from other members of the swimming or out of the sailing beach as well. They don't check. Historically, they haven't been checking. I have no idea what they're doing this year, but you know.
I got to agree that definitely they're checking passes way better than they have been. I'm talking specifically about checking when multiple people come in a car. That's exactly
to the sailing beach.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And again, I'm asking for the $30 refund for my passes.
Thank you that Mr. Wilson
You
can take
will
care of
get
that.
it.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to address the board? All right, we will be moving along. Next on our agenda is the Executive Director's Report. I'm sorry, approval of the vouchers list. I skipped over that. Sorry.
All right.
Approval of the voucher list.
All right, I move to approve the voucher list, the amount of $1,636,483.43, a copy of which is to be attached to and become a permanent part of the minutes of this meeting.
I'll second that.
Are there any comments or questions on the voucher list?
I just had one question for Steve, I think. The payments of the debt, are those separately approved because of what we do at the beginning of the year? Or we don't see it on the voucher list, we don't see it, you know, how does that get formally approved, I guess?
At the time any bonds are issued, the payment schedule is established at that
So
point.
once
So
we
it
do
could
that-
be 15 years ago
Okay.
that gets set.
Okay, so we don't have to approve every,
Nope.
okay.
Any other questions?
P-card purchasers, this past month it was $158,000. Is that fairly typical, or was that kind of high? And I don't have any other specific questions. What are typically monthly P-card?
Now you're really testing me.
I don't know. I don't know either. I could have looked. I could have tried to look.
I'd
it
have to
up.
look. I'm sure it ebbs and flows throughout our year for
That's
our
just kinda
purchasing
high.
cycle leading into the summer for supplies, things like that. I would imagine that this time of year it's higher than, say, November, but I couldn't tell you year over year what's typical versus what's not. I can tell you what we try and do is put as much on our procurement cards as possible because there is a rebate on the back end of that gets rebated back to us at the end of the year. The more you spend, the more you get back.
Okay.
I would imagine it's also easier to track.
Easier to build in approvals and purchasing limits and all of that.
Okay. That was all. I didn't really have a question. It was just.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? May we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Ovani?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Voucher list is approved.
Thank you. Now we will be moving along to the Executive Director's Report.
Thank you. Looking forward to your next agenda item. We have with us tonight Village Manager Tim Frenzer and Bridget Berger, who is our Head of Engineering and Public Works for the Village of Wilmette, here to talk to us about the stormwater project that the Village Board has selected to move forward with. That involves utilizing some open space to mitigate some stormwater flooding problems in the community. So that's next on your agenda. Moving forward with my report, Independence Day celebration on July 3rd and 4th. We had ideal weather. Therefore, we had large crowds. 25,000 is my very unprofessional estimation of the crowd size. And as always, things went very smoothly, and everyone did their jobs. We had, numerous lost parents and lost children, but everyone got reunited between the Park District staff system and utilizing the other police and fire personnel in the park. So all had fun. The fireworks went great, and this sort of thing can't happen, without the coordination of, a lot of different people, a lot of different departments in this community, and in particular, police, fire, and public works, doing everything they do, along with the Pace Bus service that runs from Eden's Plaza into the park and out of the park. So while we get to, be the fun people who light off the fireworks, there's a lot of people beyond the Park District who work hard on this, let alone the hardworking Park District staff. And then I have a little note in there about the seasonal operations. Everything's off and running at the beach and the pool and the golf course. The camps are over 6,000 enrolled for the summer. We're coming to an end of our typical session 1 this week, session 2 starting next week, and all is well in those. And then you have a couple policies coming out of the Financial Planning and Policy Committee later on in your agenda. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments for Steve?
Steve, in the park and rec meeting, we were discussing briefly that reserving spots and all that at the 3rd of July. Were you going to talk about that? You said there was something that you wanted to talk about.
The Parks and Rec meeting tonight, we talked about that?
Yeah,
I might have stepped out.
Kathy said that they were going to discuss, or maybe Carol said they were going to discuss it in their after brief.
Yeah. They have
the
a
staff has yet
meeting.
to talk about it amongst themselves.
So I had stepped out with people on the Langdon topic, so I probably didn't hear that report, hence the blank look. But yes, we have a growing trend of people coming to the park early on the 3rd to mark off their territories. What once was a handful of blankets or a tarp here or there has turned into large roped-off areas to provide the space for tables and catered events for the neighborhood. And we really probably can't continue to let that practice go on, because as night falls, those ropes and those stakes are definitely something that people are tripping over and causing problems. So we're going to have to figure out how we want to administer it and manage it going forward.
Sorry, I didn't. Now I understand. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's what I'm here for.
I would like to say a big thank you to all of the staff and the village for such a wonderful event. It's always so much fun for the community and children and families and adults and everybody just coming together. It's just a fantastic event, and so thank you for all that you guys do to make the night and the next morning. The fun run is great too. Such a successful event. Yeah, that was.
I missed that part.
Yeah, that was successful too.
Yes.
So thank you to everybody. Next up, we're kind of switching our agenda around a little bit. What we normally do, new business is our next item, and the village will be presenting to us their stormwater presentation, so we can kind of hear what's going on with that. So, Mr. Frenzer.
So you all have the slides in front of you. Okay.
And I'll just let everybody know this is something that the village board has already decided to move forward with. That they are just coming to us to let us know what their plan is, because it potentially, more than likely, will impact some of our parks. So it's get everyone on the same page.
I can go ahead and start.
Yes.
Okay.
Since I believe you all have the presentation in front of you.
We do.
Yes.
So thank you, commissioners. We really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you tonight about this important project in Wilmette. Again, my name is Bridget Berger-Reich. I'm the Director of Engineering and Public Works for the Village of Wilmette. I've had the pleasure of serving Wilmette residents for about 17 years, and we have a wonderful working relationship with the Park District and look forward to many, many years. The area that we're talking about tonight is west of Ridge Road. This area is a separate sewer system, so stormwater and sanitary water are in separate and distinct pipe networks. We're going to focus on stormwater, so the water that comes from the sky and goes onto the streets and into our inlets, into the storm sewers. The storm sewer system was built in the mid-1900s, and it was built without the benefit of any modern stormwater management techniques or design standards. So very simply, the pipes are too small. And as a result, we have as many as 3,000 properties that can flood during significant rain events. For more typical rain events, about 1,300 properties can flood. So we have flooded streets, intersections, sidewalks, yards, and in the worst cases, we have structure flooding. There we go. So just to take a little step back and try and put some context to the problem, this is a topographic heat map of West Wilmette. On the far right side of the screen is Ridge Road, which is the high point in the village, and on the far left side of the screen is the Wilmette Golf Course and the Skokie Ditch. The blue shaded areas represent low topography, low elevations, and that goes to gradients of yellow, orange, and red, which is higher elevations in Wilmette. So this is a perfect graphic to show much of West Wilmette essentially sits in a drainage bowl. And the unfortunate part about the bowl is there's no overland flow route for that water to exit. We actually sit lower than the north branch of the Chicago River where we discharge to. So all of that stormwater is collected by gravity to the stormwater pump station on Lake Avenue, where the water is pumped up and out to the north branch of the Chicago River. Boxes highlight some of the representative flood depths in this area, and you can see we tried to get some representation from various neighborhoods, but essentially even in the Valley View area, we have less than a foot of water in a 10-year storm, but in some areas we can get 2 feet of water in a 10-year storm, up to more than 3 feet of water during a 100-year event. And at 3 feet of water, at this point, I'm sure water is entering foundations of homes.
This water is in the street? That's the depth of, you're measuring in the street?
That's correct.
Okay.
So how many structures are we talking about in a 10-year event that are actually getting water in the home?
The slide is coming up.
Yeah, we'll have them do the presentation and then ask questions if that's okay.
To answer your
Are we
question.
going to hold our questions?
Yeah, if we could, that'd be great.
Okay.
311, but we'll get to that. So neighborhood storage is essentially a method of holding back stormwater, and this is called distributed storage because we selected 3 key neighborhoods that flood, so we're going to pull that stormwater out of the system and hold it until the downstream pipes are capable of that additional stormwater. So that's the purpose of stormwater storage. The 3 sites are Centennial Park or Community Playfield as an alternative. And the first phase of our engineering will do a very detailed due diligence look at both of those sites to determine which one would be most appropriate. They would both be effective. And that's considered phase 1 simply because it helps the most number of homes. Phase 2 is in the Hibbard Park area, and phase 3 is Thornwood Park up in Kenilworth Gardens. On a very conceptual basis, all 3 storage areas are designed for approximately 10 to 12 acre-feet of storage. All of it is underground. So just like the West Park project, you would not know that there is a 5.5 million gallon tank under West Park. You wouldn't know that there's 10 acre-feet of storage underneath these parks. The restoration can be as simple as restoring it to its original condition, or whatever condition is mutually agreeable between the park district and the village. This is what West Wilmette looks like during a 10-year storm, and a 10-year storm is about 3 inches of rain in 3 hours. You can see we've got widespread flooding across West Wilmette. To answer, I think, Commissioner Alvani's question, there's 311 structures that flood, in a 10-year storm, or I'm sorry,
That's fine.
Commissioner Pelleton. And just about 1,300 properties. And we define properties as water that comes up over the curb, across the sidewalk and the parkway, and encroaches onto private property. And here's what that map looks like with neighborhood storage built. You can see the 3 storage areas, and the neighborhoods immediately surrounding them are pretty free from flooding. We've got some pockets kind of in the central Wilmette area, straddling Lake Avenue. We're hopeful, though, that when we get into preliminary engineering, we can take a harder look at those areas and even protect some of those vulnerable properties as well as we get into more detailed design. With neighborhood storage, the estimates are we can reduce vulnerable structure flooding by 71% and reduce vulnerable property flooding by 67%. And the price tag on this project is about $48 to $55 million.
Excuse me, and as Steve mentioned, I'm Tim Frenzer, I'm the village manager. I'll take the last slide because that's about process. We have been through 5 years of process, more public meetings, open houses, communications to the community, newsletters, special mailings than I can count or keep track of over the time. And it's been a very difficult process for the board to get to this point because this was essentially strategic visioning. There's a problem to be resolved. What's the best cost benefit that the village can reasonably afford, how big a project, what type of project. But all that is at the 30,000 foot level. This has been essentially strategic planning in terms of what strategic direction the village should take. So at the risk of completely mashing up the famous quote, this is not, when the village voted that this was their strategic vision, this is not the end, it's not even the beginning of the end, it's simply the end of the beginning. And now the next process starts in cooperation with the Park District. Much the same way, actually, if you think about it, this is really 3 more West Park projects. And the same methodology that we use there is how we would be approaching things here. The Phase 1 engineering contract is scheduled to be awarded 2 weeks from tomorrow night. That is the jumping off point where we have the engineer who can sit down with us and the Park District and the staff, as we did with West Park, and that's where we start to literally learn from the Park District staff. And I'm sure Steve can confirm that we've already had several substantive discussions on it, but it's important for us to learn from the Park District staff, from the district, what the strategic vision for these sites are, what the Park District's recreational needs are, what the unique features of the sites are, because the Park District is more familiar with where there's standing water on the sites now, where there's drainage or drainage issues that need to be addressed. And the Park District can help us identify places, as we did with West Park, where there's opportunities to us to possibly add value. And each site is a unique site that we need to learn about and come up with a solution that will ideally make sure that whatever facility we're there is still meeting the Park District's near-term and long-term vision for the need for that recreational space, with a reservoir underneath it that's as invisible as we can make it. In the case of West Park, which I think we can all agree was a very successful project and received numerous awards for both the Park District and the village, we were able to add value with a better recreational facility than was there when we began, and even down to having to have a pump house or have the air filtration station there to make sure that the architecture at least blended in with the existing paddle tennis facility at the opposite end of the park. So I guess what I'm saying is, at this point forward, now that the board has given, the village board has given the staff the strategic direction or mission to try to implement this as a solution for stormwater flooding on the west side, the engineering now is going to be brought on board to help us actually start earnest cooperative exploration of how to make a site work. And then as we work through that, each of us come back to our respective boards with more concrete plans, with more detail, with the type of detail that everybody is anxious to learn or wants to know, and that's part of the difficulty when we're talking in strategic or conceptual terms. It'll be, well, if we do something at Thornwood Park, what's it going to look like? You're not going to put AstroTurf there, are those types of questions, which obviously we would not do, but that's where we start to get into what a project would actually look like, down to even the timing needs of the Park District. We know you have recreation programmed for these sites. As was the case with West Park, we knew when we let the contract for it, we had a tight construction window that had to be met to make the facility available in the following spring. We were able to meet that, and that's I have a high level of confidence that if we could pull off a project there where that's a bigger reservoir than we're talking about building at any of these sites, that has more complexity involved with it because it was a sanitary sewage facility and not simply stormwater, that we should be able to come up with designs for particular sites that'll meet everybody's needs and be consistent with both the village board's obligation to plan for long-term infrastructure for these types of things, and the Park District Board's responsibility to prepare and program the long-term recreational needs for the community. So that's, as I said, this is kind of the beginning now, at least when it comes to us figuring out what would actually get built. So that's really our presentation. We're happy to respond to any
questions. I'll
that
open
you
up
might
to.
have.
Should we start? Do you want to start down here,
Sure.
John? Go first.
I'm going to hold my questions to a couple of things that are probably, I think, the most relevant, and just to give you guys as a staff help in talking to our staff about what some of the, at least some of my questions and concerns would be. My first concern is that on a few occasions there's been a parallel drawn to West Park. I view that project completely different than this project. From our perspective, being in the Park District, West Park at the time that we contemplated this, was a single-use facility that was simply just a baseball field, and that was all it was. The parks that we're talking about here, at least two of the ones that we're talking about, Hibbert Park and Centennial Park, are centerpieces to our, with the exception of Gilson, they're centerpieces to our entire offering to the community. So I don't think that these are similar. I don't think that drawing that parallel is something that I'm, as a commissioner, very open to hearing that this is just like West Park. The second thing I want to get a handle on is that you mentioned that there's been 5 years of study. I'm curious to know and that this is the end of the beginning. What is your expectation for a timeline from here? Because there's talk in the community about what I consider to be an unreasonable time frame for us to contemplate this, us as a board and a staff to contemplate this. So what is I'd like to know what your expectation is on a timeline. You can hold your answers and your comments to hear everybody's comments, or we can do it however you want. But I'll leave it at that.
Well, if you'd like, I could try
Sure.
to.
Yeah, if you'd like to respond, that's fine.
To avoid. I understand your point about West Park. It is different than Centennial, and frankly, in the discussion that we have, I don't know that Centennial is actually the right site that we would recommend using. West Park was planned to be an open field. Obviously, everything that's recreational fields for sports are probably the most ideal place to put a reservoir under it, because it's not going to have trees, it's not going to have other equipment or structure on it. So I do get what you're saying. I guess I was referring to West Park in terms of our ability to be able to navigate through these things, but I do understand what you're saying about Centennial. There's part of what we need to explore with Steve and the staff is what makes sense in Centennial, as even the engineers who helped us through to this point described as a tight site if you wanted to use it, keeping in mind that what's known popularly as the Prairie Garden, that came second. Actually, the Park District has a stormwater management feature there. The Park District built it. It holds, I think, 2.2 acre feet. It was permitted by MWRD. If we couldn't impact that if we wanted to, unless we're going to design a reservoir that held all that too. The site had the advantage of being close to, close to Glenview Road, but community playfield, for example, there are, depending on which end of it you're looking at, and we would ask for guidance from the Park District for that. That's a facility that's more committed to open fields that I would hope would lend itself better to having a reservoir, and there may be issues in that field that we can help resolve. There may be issues at one end where there's poor drainage and surface flooding after events that maybe we can work with or provide some added value there. Also, though, if we were closer to the north end, it might be able to bring in more homes that you saw on the map there that wouldn't necessarily be helped, but this is what we would intend to cover with everybody. I apologize for not going through time frame. I should have covered that because that's an important question. As I said, the engineer contract is not even going to be awarded until 2 weeks from tomorrow. And we know that going forward, it's going to take time for both our staffs and for both boards to become comfortable with with whatever is ultimately figured out for the sites that would be needed. Even under the best case scenario, by the time we would have design work done, and if there was I don't know how you would even get it until the close of the 2019 recreational season, because we know we can't work when the sites are in use. So I can't imagine how you could do construction before that time. It's just not going to be possible. It may take longer. Obviously, there are residents hoping for relief sooner, but in terms of beginning engagement with the Park District staff, we expect to do that through into autumn and through into fall, hopefully sometime being able to bring progress reports to our respective boards to get feedback on where everybody is comfortable being, so that maybe by spring of 19 you're in a position to have the engineer who's going to be doing the actual design work in a position to do design work so that we can get bids out for what will amount to wintertime construction. So hopefully that.
And one follow-up question. What you used the term ultimately worked out. What does ultimately worked out mean? Is that a intergovernmental agreement?
Yes. Not to draw an incorrect parallel to West Park,
but that's... I was going to try to do the same thing, but I decided given my previous
that's exactly
comments.
how it worked. I and my staff and Steve and his staff came up with recommendations for both boards about constructing what would be there, how it would look when it was done, what facilities needed to be there, and what the timeline and guarantees from the village had to be to avoid impacting the use of the facility. And I'd expect that we all serve the same body politic. We don't want the Park District's patrons are the same people we're serving to. So we definitely want to be sensitive to both the current mission and to your strategic vision for the sites too, which is another issue with Centennial, and as you brought up, along Hibbard Road. That is something that's going to take some discussion to try to figure out. You can, at least with stormwater, we should be able to shape a box in whatever means it has to be able to shape to not adversely impact perhaps future strategic visions for what might be needed on those sites. The deeper it goes, maybe you need a pump, and ideally you'd like to have an underground reservoir that gravity can drain for you, because that's one less surface structure that's needed then. But we will do whatever we have to do to make it acceptable to everybody's best judgment.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ryrie?
Well, I appreciate what I've heard a lot of things that sound good, that are helping to make me feel more at ease with this project. Commissioner Olvani's question was one that I had as well. And I appreciate your mentioning the strategic vision for the sites, because one of the things that would be affected with any underground structure is that we certainly couldn't put a building or a structure on top of it. And so we would lose the potential development rights. And that I don't know that we necessarily have any development concepts in place for any of those parks, but it hasn't been an issue up until now. I am very concerned about the duration of the construction and our programming that we have in place for those parks. Community play fields is used year-round. Hibbard, the field area is my understanding, is used year-round. And so how we would rearrange our programs in order to accommodate this, and for how long is a considerable concern. And then ongoing concern is maintenance, the lifespan of the structure, and when is this going to have to be replaced and tear up the whole thing and do it again, because that will happen at some point. So I'm interested in it. I also recall from West Park that we ended up spending $450,000, I believe it was, that we hadn't anticipated spending because we decided on there was a difference in the kind of fill for the field, and we went organic because not going organic didn't seem like a possibility. So one of the things that I would want to ensure is that we're not put at a loss as an organization as a result of this, and so to try and be as comprehensive as we possibly can on it. And then in terms of the restoration, I had asked you about this before at one of the meetings, and I don't know that everybody on the board understands, but I believe what you told me, Mr. Frenzer, was that the only restoration that is contemplated in the budget is essentially putting sod on top of it. So that I don't anticipate that that's what this board has in mind. It may be not, but that might add, if it's not, that might add some cost to the project. And as far as the cost goes, it's not my vote, and it's not my decision, but somewhere between $151,000 and $176,000 for 311 affected structures. That's each structure. Seems like a great deal of money to me as a resident.
Well, I appreciate your comments as a resident on that subject. I think the village board heard those too. In terms of comment I might have made about sod, I'm trying to recall that if it came up in the discussion of possibly something at Thornwood, in which case people were, if there was concern about whether or not artificial turf was going to go anywhere we had a reservoir like it did at West Park, and the answer to that is no. If people want a field, then it's going to be a field. I know the Park District had some changes it made in terms of Crum because of news articles at the time and whatnot, but the village did spend over $1 million to create a recreational facility far better than was there, and on balance, I think it was a very positive net impact for the Park District. It's a field now that doesn't flood. It's a field now that is usable for longer periods of time, is usable after heavy rains. So it was a real, I think those are examples of what I think is a good value added that we were able to bring. And depending on, each park or each place is going to be different, as you pointed out, Thornwood, that's, people who live around there probably don't want to look at something markedly different than what they have now. But to the extent that the district is interested in doing wintertime programming there or other types of things going on, is there a need for water or electric or some other support infrastructure, some subsurface work that would be beneficial to promoting the Park District's other seasonal uses of it? That's something we're interested in discussing. So as long as it doesn't turn a $45 million project into a $65 million project, we also see this as an opportunity to add value for the district in performance of its mission as well. Because, as I said, we all serve the same body politic. In terms of the lifespan of the structure, I'll defer to the one who has.
I just wanted to add, the added value, I think will make a tremendous difference. Since we're going to be dislocated in some way,
Yes.
that then presenting that to our constituents, who are also your constituents, but our users more specifically, that will help us to make the medicine go down.
Understood.
50 years. I'd like to think closer to 75 for those underground structures.
Okay.
Based on what?
Then what?
Is there any history at all on these structures other than West Park?
I don't have that data. The history is based on my experience, but as we certainly go through the design, that's one of the considerations that we're going to be looking closely at, is longevity of the system.
Sorry, I interrupted.
And I assume that you would we would have to grant an easement for that area?
Which area in particular?
Any area above the tank and access to it.
That's correct.
Anything else?
That's it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
I don't.
That's fine. I'll move down. Gordon?
I noticed that we're in phase 1, 2, and 3, and I think you started to get at the question earlier, kind of the time frame. But I'm just trying to get a picture in my mind. Is it 1 year, 1 year, 1 year, or is it 2 years, 2 years, 2 years? What does kind of it look like as you look at this?
Ideally, it would be we'd like to be able to do it in consecutive years. Ultimately, that's going to be up to both the public bodies to have to agree to. We're trying to not. Obviously, we want to disrupt everything at once, and by the same token, though, I think we'd also like to, and I think the park board would also like this, to have at least some idea what's going on at 3 sites before they sign off on doing this project. That the first one isn't a pig in a poke, and then the next 2 become something different altogether. We want to make sure you're comfortable with the program, because this is a multi-year program. How, in terms of disruption, certainly the residents we're trying to serve with this would like to see it done as quickly as possible. If we can get it to the point where we can build it over a winter season and be done and have it ready for use in the spring, and then the next winter do likewise at a different facility, that would be our goal. So at a minimum, it's going to be at least 3 years. And we do not anticipate having the resources to run 3 or even 2 projects at once. These are still.
Well, you're working on one while you're still working on the other, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's. And it also, having that understanding with the park district before we go ahead on all 3 projects is important to us also as we plan how we're going to issue debt for this as well. And because even at the first meeting with Moody's, as you probably know, they're going to want to know what the full plan is, what the village's plan is to generate the revenue to pay off the debt, even if it's issued as general obligation debt, using West Park as a metaphor at least. They wanted to know what we were doing with sewer fees and what we were doing with revenue to make sure that the debt was going to be serviced, and so that the whole plan was well defined before we went to the market for the bonds.
Well, I have to say, having followed the project not as closely as some of our other commissioners, but at least from afar, I didn't envy you guys and what you've had to go through the last 4 or 5 years on this thing. And at the same time, too, our constituents are your constituents for the most part. So, we'll be I'll speak for myself, we'll be as cooperative as we can in terms of making this work for everybody.
Well, and thank you, from the village's point of view, we recognize this is a big imposition, and we do want to make sure that as we move forward, it's a plan that's going to be satisfactory, and hopefully, add value whenever we can.
I know Brian's got a lot to ask.
I have a lot. You done?
I'm done. Thank you.
I'll try everybody's patience, I'm sure. I do applaud the village for addressing this, and it was probably could have been easily swept under the table. But you guys went after this, and that's tough, especially for your board or volunteers. And it's tough on them personally as they try to make these decisions. We do represent not just the parks but the residents as well, and that's where we find common ground. So I want to emphasize that I'm not going to lose sight of that we're all representing residents, not just our village versus parks. But I do have a lot of questions. One of the things is that so far the solutions put forward with regard to the park storage, all underground storage. That was one of the variables that was locked down, has to be all underground. I would just say that I would be open to considering in certain places additional surface. You mentioned Centennial has 2.2 acre feet. Centennial is one of those parks that we may want to build on. Not us, we may not live to see it, but it's one of those facility parks, recreation parks. And so is Hibbert, and those two are kind of tough. When you're saying, well, oh, Jesus, just open land. Well, not to us. It's not just open land. That's our future. That's sort of the community's future. So I don't know that those would be, we could increase the amount of surface. Certainly community playfields is a possibility. There's 39 acres there. There's 10 acre feet that fall on that, rainfall that falls in that park. We can't handle it all, but if that would save the residents some money, I would be open to considering. But we still want to use it for recreation. There's solutions to that. So the possibility of some surface, in my mind, I'm only one of 7, but I would be willing to consider that. You guys have been at it for 5 years, and we're just getting it now. I'd like to see more dialogue on the board level. We're the ones that's setting the policy here. So we're just getting started. So I don't know what schedules and I don't know what designs you guys are contemplating, but we're just getting started. And to me, the answer, like blanket approvals of doing stuff, I'm not interested in providing blanket approvals. I'm interested in looking at the details. And I'll raise an example. At West Park, the results of West Park are successful. But when the village came to us for approval of West Park, it was a round tank, post-tension, gravity flow into the system. And that, to me, was that was great, because round, post-tension gravity meant that was going to last a long, long time. It wasn't going to fall apart. Everything was working to keep that structure in place. Well, it turned into a square, pumped-out facility that we'd already given the blanket approval to. We really didn't have anything to say about it, but, yeah, as you say, maybe that's a 50-year structure. I'm a little concerned what happens at the end of 50 or 75 years. And I'd like to see us actually talk about that. What does happen if this tank starts to fall, and who's responsible for the restoration of our park if that becomes necessary? Let me go through my stuff. You're hiring an engineer. I'm not sure what you told him in the RFP, but that's great. It'd be good to have somebody to talk to. This board may consider having a consultant of our own just to whisper in our ears, making sure that, well, yeah, that makes sense, or no, that doesn't make sense. I'm not sure I'll get that approved, but it is something we may consider, is having an engineer that we can ask our questions of. But as long as we have an engineer to talk to that we can mutually trust, I would like to be able to ask these questions, because to me, really, everything's in the details. Everything is in the details. I'm not going to get into your issues of, where to put the rebar and stuff like that, but yeah, there's trade-offs all the way through design, and those trade-offs affect you, but they also affect us. And so I want to make sure that we have somebody we can talk to. Every one of our parks is unique. Every one of our parks meets multiple needs, but they all blend together to create a park system for the community. So some parks have tremendous neighborhood assets, Thornwood, for instance. That park is a vital component, key to that neighborhood. And so I want to emphasize that we shouldn't be creating winners and losers here. And I know that's been your struggle as well, not to create winners and losers. But no neighborhood should suffer a degradation of their parks. And by the same token, the community shouldn't suffer a degradation of its park system as well. So keeping those two very much in mind as we discuss the details of this plan will be important. Yeah, I'm curious what you guys have been discussing with regard to restoration costs. I'm not going to put you on the spot here. You put together some kind of budget. I'd like to open up the hood and take a look around inside. It's all in the details. So let me just review my notes, see if I missed anything. And that's it. Again, I'd like there to be more dialogue. It's been frustrating from my perspective to watch our parks be discussed in the third person, so to speak, and not be a part of that dialogue. And people ask me questions. Aren't you guys? Yeah. It's like, well, they needed more. My neighbor needed more parking, so he decided to build a garage on my lot. So, it's kind of, yeah, they're talking about our parks. So I look forward to more dialogue. And again, the details matter greatly to me. And those are my comments, and that's it.
Thank you. I believe Commissioner Foster has a question.
I just have one question, and it's helpful for me to listen a little bit. I have to be honest, and like Commissioner Anderson, I've watched this more from afar. I know you guys have been underwater with it for a long time. Yeah, I didn't mean it. No, but I think like a lot of residents, I don't have a flooding issue. So, things that are personal to you become more passionate to you. And also being on the Park District Board, like I let you guys do your thing. We have our own lots of things that we do. So I do have some ignorance with the whole project. I see the 3 phases. Only one phase has options, and I'm just wondering if you've thought about other options, or phase 2 and phase 3 only with Hibbard and Thornwood Park. Is there anywhere else in Wilmette that would serve the purpose that you need served?
I think in general terms, and I can let Bridget get into the details, and we've kind of covered a lot of ground both with Mr. Anderson in here. In terms of, not so much targeting, the concept for the village board was whether to essentially try to build an entire network of trunk sewers all over town, or to try to store stormwater in existing open space. For better or worse, the Park District is kind of the open space, the holder of all open space, even open space the village owns and leases to the Park District, because we're not in the Parks and Rec business. That's this board's function. So, but in terms of neighborhood storage, what you're looking for is proximity to where the flooding is. So considering the map and neighborhood storage with the small blue boxes, they may be a little bit hard to see, but what we're trying to do is locate them in existing open space in proximity to where the water is, because if you put it anywhere else, it's either uphill, and the whole problem we have at the west side is that gravity is a cruel master, and we have to get it uphill to get it to the river. If gravity was working with us, we wouldn't have any of these problems. So in a global sense, we've looked at the whole west side of the village, but when you identify the different basins, you're looking for the available points in proximity to where the flooding is, as opposed to trying to move water to a distant reservoir and then move it out of there. So that's kind of how we ended up where we're at. But as we get into as Commissioner Anderson said, the details matter. community playfield being a good example. We actually did some years ago look at surface storage at community playfield, and to get what was going to be comparable there, it would have inundated such a huge portion of the park for such a lengthy period of time and left it essentially a bog when it was done. It just would have completely, it wouldn't have been workable. Underground storage gives us the opportunity to actually improve any surface drainage problems that you're having in the park where it's at.
Are these all pumped out tanks?
Depends on how deep the tank is.
Okay.
Ideally, they could be drained by gravity, but, depending on the footprint, and that we'll figure that out as we work with the park district. There's so many unknowns here. This is the process by which we move from unknown to knowns, and it's...
Well, I didn't mean to suggest that we could solve the entire problem with surface, only willing to put on some portion of surface if it was a cheap pickup. That's all. And it didn't impact our functionality.
Yeah, I was just trying to illustrate. We actually have looked at other alternatives, and we'll continue to do so at the suggestion of the park district. And we, I don't think I can stress how much we depend on the staff to help us learn about the individual sites. Each is unique. Each does fit into the system. I can say with complete confidence, the village board does not want any of the parks degraded to the point that it diminishes the overall, where they fit in the overall mission of the district, or for their individual function for the neighborhood that they're in, or for the folks that they're serving. So
That's fine, yeah. I mean, these are tough questions.
Yeah. I just had one final question. And as we're talking about the intergovernmental piece of this, I'm assuming that should anything affect the school property as well, we'll be working with them in conjunction, or you all will be working with them in conjunction.
Yes, part of the next steps that we'll have to have as we work with Steve and his staff is, let's say after working with them, there's a conclusion that community playfield would be a far better site than Centennial, because it does have a lot of advantages. It doesn't have structure. It's not planned to be a facility. It doesn't have an existing stormwater on it, and it's actually Centennial's at a higher elevation than community playfield. Mm-hmm. So it does have a lot of natural advantages. One disadvantage is we may have to work through District 39 to get a pathway from one of the two roads into the site to be able to get the water in and out. And that'll be something we'll be working with them, and I'm sure they'll have all the very similar questions in terms of what happens to the site long term. I don't have the West Park agreement in front of me, but I can say with a pretty high order of confidence, we're responsible for any future disruption caused by maintenance of the tank. We're responsible for future, if something's wrong and it's got to get fixed, if it's got to get dug, if whatever happens, the village is responsible for restoring what the park district was supposed to have gotten in the bargain there, which was the existing sports facility that you have. So, and I would have a hard time envisioning your staff or your attorney or anybody else recommending to you that the park district has somehow become the insurer of an underground reservoir that the village installed.
Thank you so much for coming to present. I'm assuming the next steps will be to have our staffs to continue to talk and move forward with the planning.
Thank you for
thank you so much.
Inviting us, and we appreciate your input. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we will move on in our agenda to committee reports. First up will be the Lakefront Committee.
Lakefront Committee met on Monday, July 2nd at Melancrot. We had a couple of visitors. One of them was Mrs. Beatty, who had sent an email asking, she's a resident of Evanston, and was asking for resident rates for the Wilmette Dog Beach. since the Evanston Beach had been eroded to the point where they have closed it entirely. The committee discussed it, and we will review the cost. She mentioned that it's 5 times the cost of a resident pass for a non-resident during our rate setting and budget discussion for the 2019 season. But we also had asked staff to take a look to see if there were any amenities that Evanston had to offer that we might exchange for this benefit. And I think Steve contacted them, and in addition to that, suggested that if Evanston was interested in making up the difference in the cost of a resident rate versus a non-resident rate, we'd be open to that. And essentially, Evanston was either not interested or didn't have anything to offer, is my understanding. While we'll discuss it moving forward, we didn't have anything that we could do for her this season. And I mention that and go on a little bit about it because I know that there are other issues around our facilities with non-residents who live nearby who want to use the facilities asking for special consideration. We also received a letter from Piper Rothschild, who is the civics chair for the Little Garden Club of Wilmette. Thank you very much. I couldn't figure out exactly the words regarding the wildflower garden and the work that's been done there, the new planting that has been done, as well as the work that Jerry's crew has done in terms of putting in the bridge and paths and a lot of weeding, thanking us for that, and that was very nice. Also, Mr. Crystal came, as I mentioned earlier. He inquired about parking lot changes to see if there had been any since the last meeting, and there had been none. He, as I mentioned, complained about the passes, not all passes being checked by the guard at the entrance to the sailing beach, and said that it's discriminatory. So we talked for some time about that, as I mentioned, I think it's a work in progress and that we're moving towards a better, doing a better job than we have in the past. He also talked about the letter from Ed Petrosius, who had been asking permission to erect a shade canopy, which I think he referred to as an alcove over his catamaran spot. We had some discussion about that and decided that that was not necessarily something that we could contemplate for a number of reasons. Mr. Petrosius, in his final sentence, complimented staff on their diligence in checking passes, so that there is sort of another side to the story. It's very difficult as commissioners who are not there all the time on site to get a sense of what exactly is happening and what's not happening. And as I had indicated in the meeting, we count on staff to do that for us. Anecdotally, we have Mr. Crystal's testimony, Mr. Crystal's statements about it. But on the 3rd of July, was on the sailing beach and was asking people about it, and I didn't run into anybody who said that they're doing a bad job of it. Instead, they said that their staff is pretty diligent about it and mentioned the occasions when they've come onto the beach and the staff has stopped them. The major part of the meeting was the beach house update from W.B. Olson. I had asked them to come to talk about the bidding process because we have only 3 weeks allocated to receive bids on this construction project, and I was concerned that that was inadequate. Dave Olson said that he didn't think that was so much of an issue, that the amount of time was not an issue, as much as it was how busy firms were with construction in general. and that they're pushing and reaching out to firms to try and get them to bid, but he's confident that we'll have it. And if we don't have multiple bids for all of the work, that they will, take that and extend the bidding or reopen it, whatever the process is, in order to make sure that we get a competitive bid situation. The bids will be opened, and correct me if I'm wrong, but on Lakeview Center on July 17th was what my notes were. And that Mr. Olson and staff will present a recommendation and a cost update to at the Lakefront Committee meeting on Monday, July 23rd. When and if the committee approves it, and there may be changes, value engineering that has to go on to reduce the costs, or who knows what changes might be made, we'll bring it to the full board, or we intend to, on August 13th. So it's a compressed time schedule. And I'm a little concerned about the August 13th, since I will not be here.
On the
13th? I may be here on the 13th. I may be leaving the next day because of this, but I'm off the top of my head, it may be a problem. Okay. But we'll see. I'm going to try not to.
I'll have to refer back to my email about the schedule. I want to say we scheduled a special board meeting earlier than August 13th for the bids to be approved. I think it was August 1st.
I seem to remember that.
Fantastic.
Full board?
Send that?
Will do.
Yeah, me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. While we're talking about that, when's our September meeting? Is it not the second Monday? The second Monday is not Labor Day. It's like a Wednesday, isn't that right? What's on the website is accurate? Okay.
I don't have it all
I
committed
think
in memory.
we may have been working around some of the religious holidays.
Yeah. We approved a new meeting schedule at the annual meeting
Okay, so that's what's in the book.
for September and October.
I think it was based on any time there was the school district took a holiday, we would also move the meeting. I think that's kind of what we went with.
But unless that's the extent of my report, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to.
Any questions for Commissioner Pelleton? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Facilities Operations Committee.
Yep, okay. The Facilities Committee met tonight before this meeting. At the ice rink, don't have a lot to report. Both public skate and open hockey were up significantly from June last year. Like, actually pretty astounding numbers. So that was interesting. And then this Saturday is the figure skating Midsummer Classic competition. At tennis, we mostly got reports on camp. The Pirate Tennis Camp program has its second highest enrollment in Pirate tennis history, so that one continues to be super popular. And then we're kind of getting a trend for Jason and his staff to be adding more competitive programs, and they've added a competitive camp that has 8 to 12 kids right now, so that's a newer program. In paddle, we found out that we were awarded an additional team for next year. So instead of 18 teams, we're going to have 19 teams. This is for the men, sorry. And Jason is working to create a Sunday league for more beginner level paddle players, just because the demand is so high, and he's getting some solid traction with Winnetka and Prairie Club and even Westmoreland. So that looks like something that will happen. The ladies paddle teams will either be up or down or the same, about one team from last year. So, and then at the pool, lessons for camp, swim, and dive lessons, session 1 just ended. We had 103 swimming lesson participants and 50 divers. Session 2 started today. We just had our first audit from Starguard, which is they come unannounced and they put our lifeguards through tests or evaluations, and we received 5 out of 5 stars. So that's excellent. DJ on Deck is every Saturday, 1 to 4. If you've been there, it's hopping. It is. It's fun. They do little contests. It's great. And then we added 3 extra lanes for lap swimming on the weekends. Is that right? Did you hear that detail?
I did not.
We extended the hours for lap swimming.
On the weekends?
On the weekends,
Okay,
yes.
I thought I got that right. And then end of season lifeguard training is coming up. We do this to hire more lifeguards for when college age guards go back to school to get us through Labor Day. So if anybody's interested, get in touch. And then finally, some of our lifeguards will be competing at the Guard Games this Wednesday in Gurnee, and last year we came in 3rd. So
Thank you.
That's
Any-
it for
Any
facilities.
questions for Commissioner Foster? All right, we'll move along to the Parks and Rec Committee.
Parks and Rec has met, well, there's been 3 meetings over the past month. There was a meeting, Parks and Rec Committee meeting on June 19th, where the main topic was Langdon Park's playground. There was a community meeting on June 27th at the park where the neighborhood was invited back for a second time to provide comments on that design, and there was a meeting again tonight. We moved it up for vacation and juggling, where again Langdon Park was very much front and center on the topic. We had a lot of residents attend. I would say that by and large the consensus was the positive, moving forward is positive. The committee made approval of the playground design, Langdon Park's playground design tonight, sent it back to staff. That seemed to have satisfied most people at that meeting tonight. Otherwise, camps are going very well. There's a few, I'm going to go over a couple lakefront things because the Lakefront Committee is busy enough. As Steve said, fireworks went extremely well. Camps are going great. The staff, residents, and their kids make it happen every year. The ABBA performance down at Wallace and Bowl has been postponed to August 27th. That's very popular. It had to be postponed for weather. And Footloose down at Wallace Bowl starts up next weekend, and then we'll go on for 3 weekends. And so that's a little bit of lakefront stuff I just snuck in there, but that's all from Parks and Rec.
Any questions for Commissioner Abbott? All right, we'll move along to Golf Operations Committee.
Okay, golf has not met since we met last. Our golf committee has not met since we met last. But I did want to point out that our head golf superintendent tweeted 2 days ago that we had 300 rounds on Saturday played. So we are, when it's, and I have been there a few times on nice days, and when it's nice, it's packed. So we hope it's nice a lot.
Any questions for golf? Finally, Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
Yes, the Financial Planning and Policy Committee meeting, our committee met on Tuesday, June 19th, and we had 4 main items of business that day. The first was the naming rights policy, which is in the packet for tonight. It deals with community and neighborhood parks. It's actually an update of an existing policy, I think from 1996, that was amended in 2006 and then sort of disappeared, I guess. But we just made a couple minor changes to it. We removed the reference to plaques in the buildings because we dealt with that with the memorial policy last time. And we got some consistency in there in terms of the votes needed at the board level for approvals. The second item was the public comment policy, which again is with us tonight. Pretty much codifying existing procedures. It's been reviewed by council. And it, kind of the main theme of it is that, we are meetings held in public, not public meetings, which I think is a distinction with a difference. So that's been covered there. And the third item was the IMRF results, or the Municipal Retirement Fund, the pension plan for 2017. They had a great year in terms of performance on the investments. The actuarial funding has increased from the high 90s to the high 80s to the low 90% at this point, which is really good. Next year's contribution at a per dollar level will be about 2% lower next year. So instead of 11%, it's going down to 9%, which is the lowest it's been in more than 15 years. So that's very positive. And there were some minor changes of assumptions they did not change their assumption in terms of what the investment return was going to be. They're sticking with the 7.5%, but they did lower the price and the wage inflation assumptions down a little bit, which I think had something to do with some of the performance there. And the final thing was we started the discussion on the uniform budget increases for 2019. Getting into fee increases, wage increases, that kind of thing. And so we had some homework to do, and when we get back with the next meeting, we'll be talking about that.
Great. Any questions for Gordon before we go to our votes? All right. We have movement?
Yeah, I'll move to approve the naming rights policy as recommended by the Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
I'll second that.
Any questions or comments on that? It's in the packet. I believe everybody should have read it. Again, it's just looking at a previous policy and updating it. So, hearing none, may we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
Yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Policy is approved.
Thank you. We have one more motion.
Yes, I move to approve the public comment policy as recommended by the Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
I'll second. Again, this is something that's in the packet. Everybody's read. Are there any questions or comments on that?
I got just a couple comments. The first thing is, thank you very much for doing this, Financial Planning and Policy Committee.
Thank you.
This
I agree.
Helps us tremendously. I think that over the course of my 7 years on the board, our meetings have become more of like a fireside chat, and to have policy in place that codifies a lot of issues, right? That we've all read it, that we all deal with on a regular basis. This gives us a lot more control in our meetings in order to take feedback but not turn it into a fireside chat. So I commend you all for putting this together, because this will streamline some of our meetings, or at least some of the meetings I chair.
John, thank you, but really, the staff does all the work, and we sort of clean it up at the end. So,
well, it wasn't just you. I was looking at you, but it was everybody.
And this is something that came out of our board evaluation that we did in the fall that was recommended. So it's something that is very common across a lot of boards, and it's good to have it in place that we can refer to it. So, anything else, John? I think we're good. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Abbott?
Yes.
Commissioner Anderson?
yes.
Commissioner Olvani?
Yes.
Commissioner Pelletin?
Yes.
Commissioner Foster?
Yes.
Commissioner Wolf?
Yes.
Policy is approved.
Thank you. Anything else for financial planning and policy? Thank you very much. I'm not sure if there's any other policies coming down the pike, but we'll be waiting to see.
There might be.
Okay. Really? Moving along, next item on our agenda is unfinished business. Is there anything that's before this board that's unfinished? Hearing none, we have an adjournment.
I'll move to adjourn.
All those in favor, or second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Oh, thank you.